Miyamoto, the monster barrel has been sighted. For 1 month only, get your limited edition design and help out the channel. Get yours today from TeePublic. Links below. Hey Pokemon Masters, Birdkeeper Toby here, and welcome back to Johto Week. This week we are going to cover a different topic about Pokemon Johto every single day for the re-release of Gold and Silver on the Virtual Console. So today's video, 10 Johto Pokemon theories, and we're going to get through them really quickly. All of these and their creators will of course be linked and credited in the description, but number one is from Hoops and Hip Hops, and it is the theory of Norman's missing child. Norman of course is a gym leader from Hoenn, but how does he relate to Johto? Well, when you start the game, you and your family have just moved from there. Norman being the player character's dad. But a really interesting bit of dialogue comes up when you first enter your house, saying that you won't have to share your room anymore, and given that you're about 12, who are you sharing your room with? Your parents? Or your sibling? Of course, you don't have a sibling in the Hoenn game, so maybe there is a character in Johto who represents this. And I think the best candidate that they could possibly come up with, that Hoops came up with, was Whitney. Whitney would have stayed behind in Johto because she is a normal type gym leader and she had her own responsibilities as a gym leader, which makes sense, same type as her father. Many of the Pokemon that Norman uses in the Black and White 2 World Tournament are Pokemon that he could catch around about Goldenrod City. Although originally Norman came from Olivine City, but a lot of the Pokemon that Whitney uses in the Black and White 2 World Tournament, she would have to have caught around Olivine City. So maybe she used to live there as well, and she's also very much around the right age to be your sibling. And all of this brought Hoops to the conclusion that Whitney, the terrifying monster that she is with her Miltank, is in fact the long-lost sibling of the player character from the Hoenn games. Number two is a theory on my channel, but actually originally created by Derek Triforce, and that is that Claire and Lance, the gym leader and Elite Four member from Johto, are Draconids. Another link to Hoenn, the Draconid people are a group of people who worship dragons, and they are all relatively, I think they're all related, which is the exact same for the people of the Dragon's Den in Johto. They are, again, all related, a similar group of people. But the thing that links these two very similar organizations together is actually the manga. Because in the manga, the Grand Master of the Dragon's Den has a Rayquaza on his head, which may well be the little bit of evidence needed to link the two organizations together. Again, it's just a short one. They are two very similar organizations that worship dragons. What do you think? Number three is a theory by my good friend Ovi. So we all know that Ho-Oh sits up on the top of the Tin Tower, but who used to sit on the top of the Brass Tower? Was it Lugia? This is referenced in lore and is actually the truth. That is where Lugia used to roost. Of course, now in Gold and Silver, you find Lugia in the Whirl Islands. So why did it leave? Well, if you take a look at Lugia's Pokedex entries, it talks about how with a flap of its wings, it can cause incredibly powerful storms. Lugia is a gentle Pokemon, and that's why it retreats to the Whirl Islands, because it doesn't want to cause too much destruction, and that's why it stays underwater, as referenced by its Pokedex entries. But it does have that ability to create intense storms. So Obi hypothesizes that these Pokemon at one point fought. Ho-Oh and Lugia went to battle, and with just a flap of its wings, it caused the storm that caused the lightning bolt that burnt down the tower where it's roosted. And so, to keep balance in Johto, Lugia fled to the Whirl Islands. Or alternatively, it may not have even been Lugia's fault, because they say it was burnt down with a mysterious fire. Not your average run-of-the-mill fire, but a mysterious fire. And lightning appears as a blue flash of light. And that is exactly the same as Ho-Oh's attack, Sacred Fire. So potentially, it was Ho-Oh's Sacred Fire that burnt down the tower when attacking Lugia. Either way, it could have been one of their fault, and then that is why Lugia has fled to the Whirl Islands. Our number 4 short Johto theory comes from Mr. Buddy. So when you're picking up your copy of Gold and Silver and you're battling your rival and you're like, man, they are a jerk, you can't blame it, it's not their fault, they had a bad hand, because they are in fact the child of Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket. Seriously, this is referenced both in a special Celebi event in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, as well as in the Pokemon Generations episode. But if Giovanni is the father, then who's the mother? Well, it seems very likely that the mother of Silver is Ariana, one of the Team Rocket executives from Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Of course, her character did appear in Gold and Silver just as a more generic design, but here in this design we see her with the same pose as Silver, with the same red hairstyle as Silver. She's also very similar to Commander Mars from Sinnoh, so maybe bonus points here, maybe that she is also related. Man, everyone in this family just gets a really bad rep. And number 5, also speaking of the admins from Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Team Rocket is headed up by a character called Archer, and Pokemon Insider released a theory speculating that Archer is also the Team Rocket executive who runs the Sevi Islands operations in Fire Red and Leaf Green. Not only are both of these games part of the remake canon, so to speak, but also both of these characters head up Team Rocket and have an incredibly similar team, with the executive from Fire Red and Leaf Green having Coughing and Houndour, whereas the executive from Heart Gold and Soul Silver has a Wheezing, Houndoom, and a Golbat. Number 6 was created by The Alchemist. Porygon was designed to explore cyberspace, Porygon 2 deep space, and Porygon Z was meant to explore alternate dimensions. Oh, so that's why you can get a Porygon from the Aether Foundation. That's a theory for another time, though. The idea that Alchemist puts forward is that Porygon 2 was actually designed as a line of defense. Not only does it fire lots of beam attacks, it has a very special attack called Conversion 2, which makes it resistant to the last type that hit it. Now, the Pokemon world has been plagued with alien invasions before. Behem and LGM, I hope I pronounced that right, and more specifically Deoxys. These Pokemon are intergalactic threats, so it seems to make sense that the Pokemon world would want to create Pokemon to defend them. And Porygon 2 seems to be created for this exact reason. Not only is the attack conversion 2 a very defensive move, but Porygon 2 is also credited for being an incredibly defensive Pokemon, especially when holding the Eviolite. So maybe Porygon 2 is there for our defense. Number 7 was created by Derek Triforce and covered by himself and Mystic Umbreon over on Mystic's channel. And this theory is to do with Mamoswine and why you can't get Mamoswine in the Johto games. Because the Mamoswine population was said to be huge in the Ice Age of the past of the Pokemon world, but now Mamoswine are pretty rare. They've pretty much gone extinct, hence why the way to evolve a Piloswine is to use the move Ancient Power. Now, Piloswine are pretty hard to come by in Johto as well. In fact, you can only really catch Swinub in the Icy Cave because that's the environment that still suits them. It seems that any that might have left the Icy Cave and evolved in a different way over time might have become the Pokemon Donphan. Both Donphan and Piloswine have the same height, weight, shinies. Donphan even knows the move Ice Shard. They both have tusks, so it seems safe to say that they're both probably pretty closely related. But then the idea is that at some point a frozen Mamoswine was found. Its DNA extracted and it was revived. And that Mamoswine knew the move Ancient Power and was reintroduced into the Swinub and Piloswine population of Johto, which is why Ancient Power is now an egg move for Swinub and it has been bred back into the population, allowing the Mamoswine's population to soar again in these modern days. Number 8 was one done by my friend Noggin quite a long time ago. You've all probably heard the theory that Wobbuffet is not the actual Pokemon and that the actual Pokemon is its tail. The body is just a sort of bag that absorbs encounters attacks, protecting the tail. And if you want to know how a Wobbuffet is feeling, look at the tail. Well, if you look at Wobbuffet's pre-evolution, Wynaut, you start to notice some patterns between it and another Pokemon. Again, the real Pokemon is actually the tail. The Wynaut that just exists is just there. It's like a body attached to the Pokemon. There for the sake of defense. And Wynaut huddled together like another very weak Pokemon that I know, the Unknown. All of these Pokemon we're talking about are psychic types. The Unknown and Wobbuffet are actually next to each other in the Pokedex. Just look at Wynaut's tail. That is an Unknown. And so the theory is that Wynaut is a form that the Unknown took so that they could explore the Pokemon world as Pokemon. And then of course they evolve into a Wobbuffet to remain defensive and to protect their body, which is the tail of the Wobbuffet. Number 8 also talks about psychic legendaries related to each other, and it's one I did on the channel not too long ago, and it's talking, of course, about the Pokemon Espeon. And the theory is that Espeon is the modern day closest living relative to the Pokemon Mew. Let's look at the similarities here. Number 1, they are both psychic types. Number 2, they are both based off of cats. Number 3, they have the exact same color scheme. And number 4, both of their Pokedex entries talk about how it uses its fine fur. Now, seeing as Mew is the ancestor of all Pokemon, it seems likely that one or another Pokemon might end up being the closest related to it genetically speaking, and Espeon makes sense as well, but one other reason. It evolved from the Pokemon Eevee. If Mew is the ancestor of all Pokemon with very interchangeable DNA, then it makes sense that a relative of Eevee would be like its closest living relative genetically speaking, because Eevee also has incredibly unstable DNA, which is what allows it to evolve into a wide variety of different Pokemon. So this makes sense. And our number 10, super quick, Johto theory is one I did on the channel last year, and that is talking about the GS ball from the show. What is in the GS ball? Well, it was speculated originally that it was supposed to be Celebi, and creators of the show even came forward and said, yeah, there was going to be a plot arc about Celebi, but then we released the 4th movie and decided to just drop it. But I don't think they really did, because if you read between the lines, you see something different. A young Professor Oak knew a young Kurt, the guy who is credited for inventing the modern day Pokeball. In the Pokemon movie Forever, a young Professor Oak sees Ash's modern day Pokeball. He then returns 40 years into the past. And by the way, the forest that they're in the 4th movie is totally like a reference to Ilex Forest from the game. It's like the show movie kind of version. There is also an Ilex Forest in the show, but the idea is that, they're probably pretty close to each other. Anyway, young Professor Oak, having seen the Pokeballs of the future, goes to his young friend Kurt and says, hey, this is what the Pokeballs are gonna look like. And then rather than creating the Pokeball because he understands how modern day Pokeballs work, he creates it based off of Professor Oak's, the things that he saw. So he creates a prototype Pokeball, the GS Ball that we see, and it doesn't work properly. The first Pokemon that Professor Oak uses it on is his friend Celebi, who he came back in time with. The Pokeball works successfully, it captures Celebi. Celebi wants to travel with Oak anyway. The problem is then they can't get the Pokeball open because it's a prototype version. Professor Oak then goes on his 40-year-long adventure hoping that the technology will catch up in that time so that he can open up the Pokeball and see his friend again. He sends it off to other researchers like Professor Ivy, and before he knows it, it's been 40 years and he's getting Ash Ketchum himself to take it back to Kurt. And now that Pokeball has gone full circle. I do hope they managed to get it open off screen. And those are 10 quick Johto theories. Over to Goldenrod Radio News. Hey Pokemon Masters, welcome to day 3 of Johto Week, a week dedicated to Johto related content to celebrate the release of Gold and Silver, of which we are getting very close to now. Tomorrow's video is going to be a top 5 of Johto Pokemon who should get evolution, so of course let me know who you think is going to be there. Here's a preview for one of them right now. Oh, that's cool. Well, we'll see you with the video tomorrow, I suppose. Don't forget, of course, you can get your limited Miyamoto merch linked in the description, and a special thank you to my Patreons, especially the big patrons, who allow me to even do things like Johto Week. Those being Joe Schofield, Nicholas0202, Nicholas, Andros Le Fay, and Immortal Absol. Thank you. So hi, Pokemon Masters.
This is Ash Ketchum. You just watched a video by Birdkeeper Toby. That makes you a Pokemon Master.
Johto.